I'm 75 years old now. I'm a certified natural health professional. Got my certification from Trinity School of Natural Health. I live in California. Been out here 54 years, I think. Been married to my wife, Jane, for 48 years. I have two sons, Nick and Sean, that are 43 and 42. And about almost 18 years ago, October, well, this is October, so yeah, 18 years ago, I first heard about this incredible water. I had already been studying health science for over about 35 years. And, along the way, you study anything that long, you learn things. But when I learned about this water, it was just amazing, and it seemed too good to be true. I honestly was very skeptical about it at first because, after over 35 years of studying health science, I'd never even heard of the concept. I thought water was water, like everybody else. We just think water's just water. But when I learned about this new Japanese water technology, I wasn't about to dismiss it, just because I thought I knew better. I wanted to research it. I wanted to know, could this possibly be true? Is there really something out there? Is water really that incredible? And could there be a special water that's even, more profound than what water is to life? So I did a deep study on it. I took about a month off of work, and I spent 8 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours a day, researching it. I read 20 books on the subject. I talked to doctors that had been using it in their clinical practice. One of them had been using it for over 13 years. One had been using it for 5 years. I listened to 350 recorded testimonies from people, just ordinary, and mom and dad, regular, your grandma, your grandpa, regular people that had certain health problems, and they started drinking the water, and their life changed for the better, and their health problems went away. And you could tell these weren't paid actors; these were real people. It's like you could listen to your grandma. She's telling you the truth, and it really left an impression on me. So I walked away from a 30-year real estate career in Southern California, South Orange County, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa area, and decided to devote the rest of my life to teaching people about the health benefits of this water, because I realized that it was the single most important thing I'd ever learned in the 35 years or so I'd been studying health science. This was by far the most important and most life-changing. And I realized that the world wasn't going to know about it if we didn't do it one person at a time, just like you're doing, Wade, or like all of us on this call are trying to do every day of our lives. Big Pharma is never going to promote water to the world. They're never going to teach the world or the doctors about this water, because it competes with their business model. Their business model is all about making money on selling you treatments, pills that treat symptoms, that will cover up symptoms but never get to the root cause. And unfortunately, in our country, Big Pharma controls every medical school in the United States. They have for decades, and this goes back literally 100 years or more, to sort of the death grip they've had on the practice of health in the United States. Now, one of the things that really stunned me back in 2007 when I learned about this was, why didn't we already know about it when in Japan they've known about it since 1965? The Japanese Ministry of Health has approved this water for its health benefits as far back as 1965. And yet in 2007, when I first learned about it, I called a good friend who was a medical researcher for the University of California system, and I asked him to research this water because I was becoming more and more impressed with what I was learning about it, but I just wanted to know what the peer-reviewed scientific literature had to say about it. So about a week later, he got back to me and told me that, Stu, I can't find anything about this water in the scientific literature in the United States. He says, no, I can't find anything good about it. I can't find anything bad about it. It's like literally it doesn't exist. He said, so that intrigued me, so I decided to increase the scope of my research. And so he started searching the databases, not just in the United States, PubMed, but, in Europe, in Russia, in China, in Japan, in South Korea, around the world. And he said he was just blown away because he said he found over 35 years of valid, peer-reviewed scientific studies from major universities and hospitals all around the world. And yet here in the United States, there was nothing published about it anywhere. Well, how could that be? There's only one way it could be, and that's Big Pharma. They control it all. They don't want us to know about it. They influence the media. They influence the government. They influence everything. They control everything in medicine. So they weren't about to let the world know that there was something out there that was better for your health than any drug they had ever come across. It was just not going to work for their profit center. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on about this, but the bottom line is I realized that, okay, it's up to all of us. This has to be done word of mouth, and that's what we're all doing. So that's just a little background on me, but I've seen the miracles, I mean, over and over and over with my own children, with my sister, with many family members, and with thousands of other people that I've shared it with over the years. So basically, I learned about it in 2007. I bought my machine after a month of research. I bought my machine November 10th, 2007. I walked away from a 30-year real estate career to teach about this water full time, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's been life-changing in so many ways. So I started, my team started to grow all across the United States, so I started traveling around the United States to support my team. You know, I've gone to probably 2/3 of the states in the United States to teach seminars, do presentations on the health benefits of this water. And it's just grown and grown and grown, and here we are today still talking about it, which I plan to do for the rest of my life. So that's my background.
I love that. You know, one of the things you said there, it's one of the most important things in this world. And so in your studying, your early studying, you learned it was one of the most important things in the world. What's the reason why you came to that conclusion, Stu?
Well, because it was helping people recover from conditions that there seemed to be no way to recover from. You might say, we don't want to say curing, because, you know, we're not allowed to say that. Whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant. We're not allowed to say it because, you know, if the FDA doesn't approve it, and the FDA has never approved anything basically that isn't, you know, big pharma oriented. Hopefully that'll change now that Bobby Kennedy's in there. He's doing wonderful things, I think. But I thank God for him all the time. But I'm sorry, Wade. Could you refresh the question again? I'm kind of rambling on and I lost the point.
No problem. One of the statements that you made, it was the most important thing in this world, and so I was just trying to understand how you came to that conclusion, or what it is that you believe is the most important thing in this world. Is it because we water, and then you start looking at that? What?
Yeah. Thank you. It's because water is the key to life. Water is the single most important thing in all of the world for life. Without water, there is no life anywhere. I mean, you could say, well, oxygen is equally as important, and of course it is. You know, there's no life without oxygen either. For most things, there are some anaerobic bacteria and things that can thrive without it. But as far as mammals and humans and most of the things that we think about, oxygen's a key. But if you look at it, water itself is more than 80% oxygen by volume. So water is sort of like a delivery system for oxygen. But bottom line is, water is involved in every single chemical process in the body that makes life possible. I mean, everything. You know, for the circulation of your blood flow to deliver oxygen and nutrients to your cells, for the circulation of your lymph fluid to eliminate waste and toxins from the body, to regulate your body temperature, to cushion your joints. I mean, literally every single enzymatic process that happens in the body only happens in the presence of water, and therefore depends on water. So water is the key to life. There really isn't any life without it. You know, it's just that important. So I learned more about water than I'd ever known before. Once I learned about this water, I started doing Dr. Matt Manglage was the world, in my opinion, did more to advance mankind's knowledge of the many roles that water plays in our body than anybody that's ever lived. And I read 5 of his books, and I learned a lot there about just exactly how water does what it does in the body. But beyond, that's just ordinary water. But what I've learned about Kangen water is it goes way beyond ordinary water. It has at least 5 known special properties that ordinary water doesn't have. There may be others that we don't even know of yet, but there's at least these 5 special properties. And they're so remarkably beneficial to our health. And that's why I feel like it's by far the most important thing.
Excellent. So what are some of those things that Kangen Water does that goes beyond what other waters do?
Well, I think the one that we all sort of are most aware of, or that I always start with, is that it's alkaline water. What does that mean? Well, there's a balance in nature between acid and alkaline. You know, if you're a farmer, you know that the pH of your soils can have a lot to do with your crop, success of your crop yield and stuff like that. Well, in the human body, it's extremely important what your pH balance is. And for, I think a lot of our audience probably knows this, but in case there's some new people listening in, pH stands for potential of hydrogen. And I guess the most important thing to know as it comes to human health is that our bodies are meant to be alkaline. They're not meant to be acidic. You know, these are polar opposites. Alkaline and acid are opposites of each other. And every fluid in your body, your lymph fluid, your bloodstream, the water inside every one of your trillions of cells, the water outside your cells that they bathe in, all these fluids in the body, they can have various pHs, but they're all meant to be alkaline pHs. The only exception is your stomach. You need to have an acidic environment in your stomach because you need acid to digest your food and also to control bacteria that may enter the stomach with your food. But other than the stomach, every single environment in the body is meant to be alkaline. Well, here's the thing a lot of people may not be aware of, but the disease process itself, the aging process and the disease process, it comes when you get out of balance, when you're no longer alkaline, or when you start to be acidic. All of the pathogens are things that could make you sick or eventually kill you. Things like virus, fungus, mold, yeast, bacteria, mycoplasma, cancers. All these things thrive in an acidic environment low in oxygen, but they cannot thrive in an alkaline environment that's rich in oxygen. So the absolute key to health is to maintain an oxygen-rich alkaline environment in your body, in your cells, in your fluids, in your tissues. And this water is tremendously beneficial at helping you do that. Unfortunately, in our modern lifestyles, so many of the things that we are doing now are leaving us acidic rather than alkaline. 97% of all the foods that you can eat are going to produce some form of acid residue in your cells. You know, whenever energy is produced in nature, there's always a residue. If you burn logs in the fireplace, after the fire goes out, there's ashes left over as the residue. If you have an old furnace that burns coal, when the furnace goes out, there's cinders at the bottom. That's the residue. In your car, the exhaust fumes are the residue. Every time energy is created in nature, there will always be a residue, and that also applies in every one of the trillions and trillions of cells in our body. As our mitochondria inside our cells are making energy to do the work of life to keep us alive, there's also a residue. And because, you know, our energy originates from the food we eat, you know, the food becomes the fuel. When you combine the food fuel like glucose or fatty acids in the cell with oxygen and respiratory enzymes that are the catalysts that accelerate the production of energy in the cell, when you do that, there will always be a residue. And because all food is carbon-based, that residue is carbonic acid. Well, our body is designed to eliminate that carbonic acid. It's one of the keys to health is that, you know, just like a fireplace, you got to clean it out every once in a while. Just like the furnace, when I was a little kid, I had to go down in the basement and clean the cinders out of the furnace once in a while. It's just part of what you have to do. Well, it's just like your fish tank and, you know, aquarium for your fish. You got to clean the water every once in a while, get the waste products out so the fish can stay healthy. It's the same with our cells. You have to clean out the acid waste products out of the cell. Well, nature's given us a beautiful way of doing that because when you combine carbonic acid with water, that's what carbon dioxide is. So we have our red blood cells that take oxygen into the cell to create the energy, but then after the red blood cells drop off the oxygen, they also pick up the carbon dioxide and carry it to the lungs for elimination. So you have this beautiful system to help you get rid of a lot of the acid in your body. Unfortunately, in our modern lifestyles, we're eating so many processed foods, you know, so many denatured foods. You know, instead of breast milk, you know, we're having formula. Instead of raw milk that animals can provide. We're boiling it and homogenizing it and, chemically altering foods. I mean, there's so many things now that are leaving so much acid residue in our body that we have an imbalance. And our bodies are becoming acidic in more areas, and that's what leads to the aging and disease process. All of the disease processes, doesn't matter what you call it, cancer, diabetes, lupus, multiple sclerosis, migraines, allergies, asthma, arthritis, just go down the list. They all have common denominators. They all come and develop in a body that is dehydrated and that is acidic and that is toxic. So one of the absolute keys to health is to restore the alkaline pH in your tissues, and that's what this water does. This Kangen water, as we call it, is highly alkaline water. To put that in perspective, the pH range goes from 0 to 14. 7 is neutral. So anything above 7 is alkaline, and any number below 7 is acidic. It's a logarithmic scale, meaning that for each one number increase, it's actually tenfold. So let's say you have ordinary tap water throughout most of America. Typically, your tap water is right about 7.5 pH, so it's slightly alkaline. Some areas will be higher. If you have hard water, it might be 7.8 or 8.2 or something like that. But just a rough average, tap water is about a 7.5. Well, neutral is 7, but 7.5 is slightly alkaline. Well, our Kangen water, we have 3 different settings for the drinking water. You start at 8.5, you transition after a couple of weeks to 9.0, and after a couple of weeks of that, you transition to 9.5 pH. So rather than drinking ordinary tap water that might be 7.5, we're drinking water that's 9.5, and that's not a 2 difference, it's a 100 difference, because it's logarithmic. So the difference between 8.5 is 10 times more alkaline than 7.5 tap water, and 9.5 is 10 times 10 or 100 times more alkaline. So when you drink this water, you're drinking water that's 100 times more alkaline than the ordinary water. And if you happen to be in the habit of drinking bottled water or reverse osmosis water or distilled waters, all of these waters aren't alkaline at all. Well, I shouldn't say all. Some bottled waters are spring water, and they do have alkaline minerals in them. But more than half of the bottled water sold in America, and especially the big name brands like Dasani and Aquafina and Ozarka and Nestle's and all these big brands, they're purified through reverse osmosis, which strips all the minerals out of the water. So that means it's dead water without any minerals, which makes it acidic. So if you're drinking reverse osmosis or purified bottled water, which is reverse osmosis, it's typically about 6.0. Even if we were generous and say it was 6.5, slightly acidic, then the difference between that and our 9.5 is 1,000 times, because each 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, that's 3, and each one's 10. So 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000. So drinking our water is 1,000 times more alkaline than if you're drinking distilled water or reverse osmosis bottled water or with a home filtration reverse osmosis. It makes a huge difference. Think about that, 1,000 times more alkaline. And even if you're just drinking tap water, our water is 100 times more alkaline. And why is that important? Because you have to be alkaline to be healthy. Alkaline basically means the presence of oxygen in the water. That's really what it breaks down to. The more hydrogen, water is H2O. There's just 2 things that make up water, hydrogen and oxygen. We all know that. The more hydrogen atoms concentrated in the water, the more acidic it is. And the more oxygen atoms in the water, the more alkaline it is. And we thrive in the presence of high oxygen. So we need the alkaline water. Our bodies are designed to maintain this alkaline balance by the liquids we drink and the foods we eat. And, 100 years ago in the old days, when people lived on family farms and, had their own garden and grew their own crops, there were lots of alkaline minerals in the soil, and you got a lot of alkaline minerals from the food you ate. And also people would have their own wells, or they certainly weren't drinking bottled water. They were either getting water from their city wells or from their own wells on their farms or in their little towns and stuff. And the water had alkaline minerals in it. But nowadays, if you fast forward, more than half the bottle of water has the minerals stripped out of it, and our soils are being depleted of minerals. We've got these huge corporate farms where they're over farming the soils. I mean, they keep adding chemical fertilizers so they can keep getting good crop yields, but they're not replacing all the minerals. They put in the big three, potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus, to get the big crop yield. But, there's at least 80 other trace minerals that are supposed to be in the soil and therefore supposed to be in the food we're eating, and many of these are alkaline minerals, and we're no longer getting them in our diet. So we're really out of balance. And that's why we are having these diseases that used to be adult diseases that our kids are having them now. Children are now getting, like when I was born in 1950, it was very rare for children to have cancer. I mean, it was very rare. And now cancer is the number one killer in children younger than 14. And when I was a kid, diabetes, you had diabetes mellitus, which was, the original diabetes, and then you had what was called adult onset diabetes. Well, nowadays they had to change that name. They don't call it adult onset anymore. They call it type 2 because it's no longer limited to adults. The kids are getting it. So my point is that our younger generations are being even more depleted of minerals, and these acidic, toxic conditions that used to accumulate and lead to diseases in adults and old people, now our kids are having them. So it's really important that you are able to restore the alkaline buffering ability in your body, and this water is a great asset to doing it because we're just not getting enough of it from our food anymore. So anyway, long answer to the story, but so that's a major property of the water, is it's very, very alkaline, and it helps rebalance the body, and that's one of the things you need to do for the body to be able to heal itself. We don't claim that the water cures disease or that it prevents disease or that it treats disease. It isn't like that. What we're saying is that the body has the ability to heal itself. God's designed our bodies to be self-healing on a cellular level. They know how to heal. They have the knowledge. They know what to do, and they're always trying to heal. They never stop struggling to heal. But the problem is the body can't effectively heal when it's acidic and when it's toxic and when it's dehydrated. In order for the body to unleash its innate ability to heal itself, it needs to be alkaline rather than acidic. It needs to be well hydrated rather than dehydrated, and it needs to be cleaned out, detoxified rather than toxic. And of the 5 properties of the water that I started to mention, 3 of them deal exactly with that. We need to hydrate, and there literally is nothing in the world that will hydrate you better than this water. Water hydrates every cell in the body, but our Kangen water is special. It's what we call microclustered water. In other words, it's much smaller water. You'll never find individual molecules of water in nature. They always cluster together. And, typical water coming out of your faucet might be 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 water molecules clustered together. Imagine like a bunch of grapes on a vine. And these individual molecules of water are held together by hydrogen bonds. And the more molecules in that cluster, the stronger the bonds that hold it together. The challenge with that is that in order to get water inside the cell to deliver oxygen and vital nutrients to make life possible, to get the water into the cell, these clusters don't fit. They're too large. The aquaporin channels in the cell membrane that take in water, they only take that water in individual molecules. But in these clusters, they're held together, and eventually some of these molecules will break free of the cluster, and that's how you hydrate. But our water is what we call microclustered. What that means is instead of the typical water cluster of Kangen water, instead of it being 15, 20, 30, 40 molecules, it's only 4, 5, or 6 molecules. So the fewer the molecules in the cluster, the weaker the hydrogen bonds holding it together, the more freely it breaks apart and dissociates. So when you drink this Kangen water, you not only get the benefit of the alkalinity, but you get the benefit of the microclustering because these individual molecules are freely available in abundance. So you can deeply hydrate your cells much faster, much more efficiently because you got a lot more of the individual molecules that you need. And they've actually done studies with nuclear microscopes where they can actually watch the water as it goes in and out of the cell. And when you drink Kangen water, they've proven that literally the water molecules enter the cell membrane 3 times faster, or 300% more efficiently than any other liquid or water you can drink. And just as importantly, it cleans out and flushes out the waste products 3 times more efficiently. So that's the second great advantage of the water. It's just smaller clusters. The other great advantage that is specific is the water has an ability to detoxify. This is powerful and amazing. I mean, really amazing. Remember I said the 3 things you need to do for your body to self-heal is you need to become alkaline, you need to become well hydrated, and you need to detoxify. Well, we already know it's 100 times more alkaline than average water, has a great ability to hydrate 300% more efficiently. It also has a great ability to detoxify. As we go through life, we come into this world, as a new baby, where we're nice and clean and pink and healthy and everything. Well, not always pink, but just healthy and plump. And at birth, a baby is 90% water. By the time you're middle age, the average person is less than 70% water. By the time you reach 50 years of age, the average American, men are down to 55% water content in their body on average, and women are down to about 50% on average. And by the time the average American dies in their late 70s, they're less than 45% water. So we're literally going through life getting drier and drier and drier on a cellular level throughout our life. Well, this water helps turn that around. So the first property is it's incredible at alkalizing. The second property is it can I'm losing my train of thought. The first one was alkaline. The second one, microclustered, hydrates better. Excuse me. The third property is that it. Oh man, I'm so sorry. My brain is so half asleep this morning. Wait, where was I? I was alkalinity.
So you're looking at the 5.
Clustering. Oh, the detoxification. That was. Thank you. I keep getting off track. My mind is sleepy. I'm sorry. The truth is, I didn't get up early this morning. I just stayed up, waiting for the call. So I watched the rerun of the Cubs game, and I watched the Dodgers game again and stuff like that. So I thought, well, no sense going to bed. I'll just stay up until after the call. So I'm a little bit diggy, and I apologize. But so the third property is
detoxification.
Thank you. Okay, so how is that possible? So we all know that, you can use water to clean things, to rinse things off, to wash things. It's the same in your body. Ordinary water will help carry toxins out of your body. That's part of the design. Your liver will filter toxins out of the bloodstream, try to break them down, and then they go out through the kidney and are filtered out and go out through your urine and stuff like that. And of course, you need water to do that. But here's what makes the Kangen water so exceptional. It's incredible properties of detoxification, well beyond what ordinary water has. And the reason is that ordinary water is neutral. That means it doesn't have a charge. Like in nature, things have a charge. Like most things will have either a positive electrostatic charge or a negative electrostatic charge. Some things are neutral, and water is one of them. Ordinary water is neutral. It doesn't have a charge. It's balanced. So like hydrogen is charged as a positive 1, and water is H2O, so there's 2 parts of hydrogen, so +1 and +1 is +2. Oxygen has a -2 charge, so when you take the +2 from the hydrogen and the -2 from the oxygen, that balances out, so water has no charge, so we say water's neutral. Well, Kangen water isn't neutral. One of the great properties of Kangen water, it has a negative charge. And the reason this is so important is because in nature, opposites attract. Just like a magnet, if you put the north pole of a magnet to another north pole of a magnet, they will repel each other. If you put the south to the south, they will repel each other. But if you put the north to the south, they strongly bind together. Well, that's the same way in nature. Negative and positive will attract to each other and bind to each other. So where ordinary water has the ability to kind of rinse things and carry them out of the body, Kangen water with this negative charge has the ability to bind with toxins and acid waste and poisons and things and pull them out of your body. Because all of these things that accumulate in your body over your lifetime that we call toxins, things like pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, chemical residues, air pollution, chlorine, fluoride, the horrible things they put in vaccines, like aluminum and mercury and polysorbate 80 and benzene, and all these bad things that we're exposed to, food preservatives, these things that accumulate in your body over your lifetime, almost all of them have a positive electrostatic charge. The only one I know of that doesn't have a positive charge is chlorine, and there may be others, but almost all of them are positively charged. And Kangen water is negatively charged, and just like the magnet, the opposites attract. So when you drink Kangen water, you're not just rinsing out and cleaning your cells, you're pulling these poisons and toxins out like a magnet. And I mean, it's dramatic. I mean, I could tell you a couple stories that would probably take too much time for what we have, but it just basically, I had an uncle that had COPD emphysema, had been on oxygen for years. His lungs were just horribly destroyed. He'd been an exterminator with Orkin for over 20 years, where he breathed those chemicals all the time, and his lungs were just a mess, and he was getting pneumonia 10 times a year, and he was hospitalized 50 times in a 5-year period for pneumonia. Was on oxygen 24/7. It was just, his lungs were so toxic, We got him on Kangen water, and within 30 days, he's off oxygen. His COPD emphysema went away. He got off of his inhalers. At 76 years of age, he got a job as a security guard at Hillsdale College. He took up jogging as a hobby. He'd been on oxygen for years, and now without oxygen, he's jogging a quarter of a mile a day, and he lived 10 years longer and never got pneumonia again. And that all happened because of the incredible property of the water to detoxify and clean out his lungs. I had another guy named Charles that had kidney cancer, actually had liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, and small intestinal cancer as well. Had been on 4 years of chemo. His kidneys were so poisoned from the chemotherapy that he had to go on dialysis 3 days a week. And they sent him home to die in hospice care when the cancer spread to all 5 different organs. His kidneys completely shut down. His kidneys were so toxic from the chemotherapy, and now they both have cancer on top of that he couldn't even make urine at all. He went 70 consecutive days without being able to urinate. He gained 180 pounds of body fluid because he couldn't eliminate any fluids. He couldn't urinate because his kidneys were basically dead. We started him on Kangen water on his deathbed in hospice care when the doctors only gave him 1 to 2 days to live. He was on morphine. The hospice nurses were giving him morphine. His days were numbered. We started him on the water. Within 3 days, they cleaned out his kidneys so much. That water, with that negative charge of the water, binding with the positive charge of the chemotherapy and pulling it out of his kidneys and cleaning it out of his body, his kidneys started to work again. After 70 days of not making urine, in only 3 days of drinking this water, his kidneys started to work again. That's how incredible this water is at its ability to detoxify. Okay, so those 3 are the big properties. Another property of the water is it's what we call structured water, and that's a little on the technical side, but basically water is supposed to have the hexagonal structure, the 6-sided structure, just like a snowflake. Well, our water in our world today is so polluted. Our oceans are so polluted, our rivers, our lakes, our streams, from 100 years of pollution and, the Industrial Revolution and all the garbage that's accumulated in our water, acid rain coming down with chemicals and everything. Our water's been so denatured and polluted that doesn't even maintain the hexagonal structure anymore. It actually has a 5-sided or pentagonal structure. And this isn't the way water was designed in nature. So Kangen water restores the 6-sided hexagonal structure. Well, you might say, how is that possible? Well, in order to maintain structure of water, you need energy. And when you run the Kangen water through the machine through the electrolysis process, after you fill the water, it goes through an electrolysis chamber. We put a powerful 230-watt electrical current into the electrode plates as the water is running over. So that 230 watts of electrical energy is going into the water, and that energizes the water and it restores the hexagonal structure. So when you drink Kangen water, you're literally drinking water the way nature intended. You're restoring this hexagonal structure. And just to give you the big picture, the man who used to be the world's leading water scientist, he's passed away now, but his name was Dr. Mu-Shik Jeon from South Korea. He was world famous. He studied the properties of water for more than 40 years, and he had his research published over 250 times in peer-reviewed journals. He was literally the guy in the world of water research. And he wrote a book called The Water Puzzle and the Hexagonal Key, all about this structured hexagonal structure of water. And, of course, that's one of the books I read when I said I read those 20 books when I learned about Kangen water. And in the book, he calls it structured water rather than Kangen water. That's our trademark name, but, he's referring to our water. And in the book, he says that the more of this water that you drink and the more of your body tissues that are made of this hexagonally structured water, the healthier you will be and the longer you will live, and that there are no exceptions to that rule. He said it applies to all humans, all animals, and all plants. So it's another remarkable benefit of the water is that it's structured water. Wade, can you help me with the fifth one? It's alkaline. Antioxidant. That was the one. Sorry, answered my own question. The fifth major property of the water is that it's antioxidant water. Now that's simply incredible. I'm sure all of you by now have heard of things called free radicals and antioxidants. Well, the free radicals are bad. The antioxidants are good. Free radicals are basically unstable molecules or atoms in the body. They're missing an electron, so they're unstable. So they literally go around trying to react with a neighboring atom or molecule to try to steal basically the electron that they're missing to stabilize themselves. So basically they attack your cells and tissues. Stanford University is one of the leading research institutes in the world in this area of health science, and their researchers have discovered that of each of the cells in our body, and you might have 40 trillion, 50, 60 trillion cells depending on your body size. We all have trillions and trillions and trillions of cells. Every single one of them is attacked by free radicals stealing electrons more than 10,000 times each day of our lives. Think about that. What an assault on our life. I mean, this is the chemistry of life and death, is the loss of electrons by free radicals. So nature has provided these things called antioxidants, and you can get them from your food. You've all heard of the famous antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E and beta-carotene and coenzyme Q10, and those are the supplements. But you've also heard of things like, blueberries and oranges and lemons and limes and, bell peppers. I mean, a lot of these good foods that we eat, fruits and vegetables especially, are loaded with antioxidants. So that's why you're healthier when you eat them. You have more antioxidants that can donate electrons to stabilize these free radicals so they don't have to attack your cells all the time. Also, our body makes our own master antioxidants like glutathione and superoxide dismutase. Our body makes these things all the time because you have to maintain this balance. You will always generate free radicals. As a matter of fact, when energy is produced in the cell, it's generating free radicals. We call them reactive oxygen species. That's another name for them, but they're free radicals. So you have to be able to neutralize those, and to the extent that you can neutralize these free radicals, it slows the aging and disease process. Because this is one of the roots that all disease process is the breakdown of the cells. Health begins in your cells. It's not about your organ or your gland. It's about the individual cells that make up the organs and glands. So if your cells are healthy, the organ and glands will naturally be healthy. So we have membranes around our cells. They're fatty membranes, 2 layers that surround our cells. They're barriers to protect the cell. Life is inside the cell. You got to protect that life. Just like you have your skin to protect your body from the outside world, you have the membrane on the cell to protect the inner workings of the cell from the outside world. Well, those cell membranes are very vulnerable to free radical attack because they're soft and they're fats. And free radicals easily attack them, especially if we're eating bad fats. If we're eating hydrogenated oils and fried foods and trans fats and these vegetable oils, seed oils they call them, these denatured oils that have been heat processed, these aren't the way God and nature created fats for our body. These are chemically altered things that factories are doing and food processing companies are doing to try to extend the shelf life. But when the source of fats that you eat aren't good, then your cell membranes can't be healthy, because your cell membranes have no choice but to make that membrane out of whatever fats that we're given it in our diet. And in our modern lifestyles, the quality of the fats we're eating have been denatured in many cases, and they're no longer as good. So our cell membranes are weak and fragile, and they're very vulnerable to the attack by these free radicals. And when this is the entire disease process. If you get this picture, you'll understand it all and why the water is so incredible. When the cell membranes are attacked 10,000 times a day and losing electrons to free radicals 10,000 times a day, it takes a toll on the integrity of that cell membrane. And that cell membrane becomes oxidized. Just like a piece of iron that you leave out in the grass and gets wet and in the rain, it'll rust. Your cell membranes are rusting or oxidizing. And when that happens, those membranes aren't as permeable. So it interferes with the ability of the body to get adequate oxygen and liquid water, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, proteins, glucose, fatty acids, all the nutrients in the water, the oxygen that you need inside the cell. if that cell is oxidized, it's not as permeable, and you're not getting as many of those nutrients in, so it lowers the energy production of the cell and weakens the cell and makes it less healthy. And in the same oxidized membrane not only prevents the optimal intake of good nutrients into the cell, but it also blocks the optimal removal of the waste products from the cell. So as more and more of these waste products accumulate inside the cell, guess what happens? The cellular environment goes from an alkaline oxygen one, which is what we need to be healthy, to an acidic low oxygen one, which is exactly what the diseases flourish in. So why are you supposed to get diseases? Because the bacteria, fungus, mold, yeast, cancer, virus, all these things thrive in that acidic low oxygen environment. Now that's happened because the cell membrane was oxidized. So here's the incredible thing about Kangen water. Because water molecules are so small, every glass of water you drink has millions and millions and millions of water molecules. They're so tiny. When you run the water through the machine and over the electrical current, you break up the water molecule. The normal H2O, you'll knock off one, sometimes both of the hydrogen atoms off the oxygen atom. So most of the molecules of water now, instead of being H2O, they're H1O. They're oxygen with only one hydrogen. Well, when you do that, that's how you're creating negatively charged water. Because when you have the two hydrogen, that's +2, and the -2 oxygen, that balances to be neutral. But when you knock off one of those hydrogen atoms from the water, which is what the electrical current does, now you've only got one positive hydrogen. So it's a +1 and a -2, which gives you a net negative charge. So the Kangen water is negatively charged. So because opposites attract, when you drink this negatively charged water, it binds with toxins, pulls them out of the body. So it's just amazing, how beneficial it is to the body when you have all these 5 benefits. You restore the alkalinity. You have, I jumped from one thing to the other. I went from the detoxification and forgot about the antioxidant part. So what I need to explain is when the water goes through the machine, the same electrical current will break off these hydrogen atoms, and it does convert the water into neutral water. But what happens to the hydrogen atoms? The individual hydrogen atoms ended up accumulating in the water. And one of the properties of hydrogen atoms when they're not attached to something else is that if they come into contact with trace amounts of platinum, then they release their electrons. So our electrode plates, the metal plates inside the electrolysis chamber of our machine that the water runs over, they have a thick coating of platinum all over them. So trace amounts of platinum are released into the water, and when they come in contact with the hydrogen atom that's been broken free from the water molecule, that causes the hydrogen atom to release the electron. So you literally have millions of free electrons floating in each glass of water Kangen water that you drink. Well, remember what we said. What are antioxidants? Antioxidants have extra electrons that they donate to neutralize or stabilize the free radicals. So this makes the Kangen water the most powerful antioxidant you can have, because there's literally millions and millions of free electrons in every glass you drink, and these same electrons are what neutralize the free radicals and stop the assault or slow the assault of the aging process or disease process on your body. Here's what's truly remarkable. The cell membrane that has become oxidized, that's no longer efficiently taking in the nutrients and efficiently cleaning out the waste products, when you provide it with enough electrons, which Kangen water does, you can replace the electrons that were stolen by the free radicals. And when you replace these electrons in the cell membranes, you remove the oxidation from the cell membrane. It's like a rust remover. Kangen water is like a rust remover to the cell membrane. So when you remove this oxidation from the cell membrane, it becomes fully permeable again, and now you can start taking in optimal amounts of water and oxygen and nutrients. And since the water is microclustered, you get it in 3 times faster, and you clean the waste products out 3 times faster. So what you do is you quickly change the water in the fish tank, thinking of the cell as a fish tank. Or you flush this low oxygen acidic water out of the cell, and you replace it with high oxygen alkaline water. When you do that, that increases the cell's ability to make energy by 18 times. You dramatically improve the cell and the energy, the energy capacity of the cell, but more importantly, you take away the environment that breeds disease. The low oxygen acidic environment that causes bacteria, fungus, mold, yeast, virus, and cancer to thrive, you've taken that away. By repairing the cell membrane with this incredible antioxidant potential, you've restored a healthy environment inside the cell. It isn't conducive to disease, and if it isn't conducive to disease, that means it's conducive to health, and it restores health to your body. That's how the body heals. It's incredible when you put these 5 properties all together, what it does. And I've been doing this, and next month will be full-time for 18 years. I've shared this with thousands and thousands of people, and I have never found any health condition that doesn't improve dramatically when you drink enough of this water. So in other words, what it means is when you clean out your body, when you hydrate your body, when you alkalize your body, when you provide antioxidants to your body, and you restore the hexagonal structure of your body, those are the things that the body needs to heal and to flourish. So there isn't anybody that won't benefit from this water. It literally is the world's healthiest substance.